After 25 years as a Navy SEAL, I thought peace would come easy. No more sandstorms or gunfire, just quiet mornings and the smell of fresh-cut grass. My wife, Sarah, and I bought a home in Pine Creek Estates, a community that promised serenity and safety. She worked as a nurse, still giving while I tried to forget. I spent my days in the garage, trading rifles for tools, building a trellis as our 25th anniversary gift. Sarah wanted roses, fragile things that needed care. When I finally placed it in the garden, she hugged me like I'd built her a castle. For the first time in years, I felt grounded. We didn't know that trellis, that small symbol of love, would become the spark for a war we never asked for, one that would test every ounce of discipline I'd ever learned. It started with a knock, 3 sharp raps that carried authority. A man in a tight polo stood on our porch, clipboard in hand, muscles flexing under the HOA logo. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Chad Wilson, compliance officer for Pine Creek Estates," he said, his tone dripping with arrogance. "That garden structure violates Regulation 27B, Section 4. You'll need to remove it within 48 hours or face a $500 fine." I blinked. "You're talking about the trellis? It's just a few beams of wood for roses. The rules are the rules," he repeated like a machine. Then he smiled, a predator's smile, and handed me the violation slip. Sarah tried to reason with him, but he was already halfway down the driveway. That night, I read the HOA bylaws for the first time. Fine print, contradictions, loopholes, enough to make a lawyer dizzy. Still, I decided to play it civil. 25 years of missions had taught me one thing: you never strike before gathering intel. The next morning, another notice appeared. Then another. Lawn height, mailbox color, unauthorized vegetation. They'd even cited Sarah's herb garden, the one she used to make tea for her patients. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was personal. Sarah's hands trembled as she read each fine. "Jack, this is harassment." I nodded, scanning the street. The same HOA SUV idled near the corner. Chad sat inside, pretending to type on his phone. Neighbors whispered that Pine Creek's HOA was run like a private army, led by Karen Matthews, a woman who smiled like a politician and ruled like a dictator. By week's end, our fines totaled over $2,000. Sarah wanted to pay and move on, but I saw something deeper. This wasn't enforcement. It was extortion disguised as order. So I began documenting everything: dates, names, photos. It wasn't just about protecting my wife anymore. It was about understanding my enemy. That Saturday, Sarah decided to take down the trellis. "If removing it ends this nonsense, so be it," she said. I was in the garage when I heard shouting, then a scream. I ran outside. Sarah was on the ground, clutching her shoulder. 3 men stood over her, Chad in front, a phone camera pointed at her like a weapon. "She refused an inspection," Chad barked. "We have authority to enter for compliance checks." I knelt beside Sarah. Her shoulder was dislocated. Pain shimmered in her eyes, but she whispered, "Don't. Not like this." I looked up at Chad. Years of combat training told me how easy it would be to drop him where he stood. But Sarah's words anchored me. Instead, I said quietly, "You made a serious mistake." When the police arrived, the officer smirked. "Neighbor dispute," he said, dismissing Sarah's injury. That's when I knew this fight wasn't about rules anymore. It was about power. And I just declared war. The officer's name was Benson, friendly with Karen and the HOA board. He took no notes, filed no report, and told us to settle it peacefully. Sarah spent the night in the ER, her shoulder in a sling. Watching her grimace in pain reignited something I thought I'd buried in the desert: calm, cold determination. These people weren't just bullies. They were organized. And they had protection. So I called Mike Johnson, a retired cop who lived next door. When I told him what happened, he sighed. "I've seen this before. Karen's turned the HOA into her personal fiefdom. But if you're serious about pushing back, I'm in." That night, I started my new mission: dismantling Pine Creek's corruption, legally, surgically, completely. Mike brought files, old complaints, meeting notes, photos. "They've been driving families out for years," he said. Rebecca, his wife and a journalist, joined us, her eyes bright with purpose. "You expose them. I'll make sure the world sees it." My garage became a command post. Whiteboard, laptop, camera feeds, all of it mapped like a battlefield. Sarah helped despite the pain, printing documents, organizing evidence. If they can bully us, she said, they can bully anyone. We discovered financial irregularities, fake consulting fees, missing landscaping budgets, phantom contractors. The HOA wasn't just cruel, it was corrupt. I knew better than to rush. Strategy wins wars, not rage. So I gathered intel, recorded meetings, and filed formal requests for financial disclosures. Every move was precise, deliberate. They thought they were tightening their grip, but every step they took only tightened my net around them. I started attending HOA meetings, calm and polite. Every word I spoke was calculated to make Karen nervous. Transparency builds trust, I'd say, smiling. Her smile always faltered. I posted our experiences online, carefully, anonymously. Soon, other residents shared their own stories. Wheelchair ramps denied. Fines for holiday lights. Karen tried to shut us down, claiming community unity. But the more she pushed, the more people began to question her authority. Meanwhile, Sarah returned to work, sling and all. Her patients asked what happened. She simply said, "Never let anyone intimidate you." Her courage spread faster than any post I could write. By the end of the week, the HOA wasn't feared anymore. It was doubted. And once fear breaks, power follows. Karen and Doug, her treasurer, panicked. They sent us a final offer, drop the complaints and move out, or face foreclosure. I laughed when I read it. They're desperate, I told Sarah. They just don't know it yet. I forwarded the threat to the state's housing authority. Then something unexpected happened. Chad showed up at my door. "Look, man," he said, eyes darting. "You didn't hear this from me, but Karen's covering something big. Missing money. Fake accounts." For the first time, I saw fear, not arrogance, in his expression. That was the crack I needed. I passed his statement to Rebecca, who started digging into HOA finances. Within days, she found enough dirt to bury a city hall. The storm was coming, and this time, I wasn't the one on defense. The next HOA meeting was packed, neighbors shoulder to shoulder, tension thick as smoke. Karen smiled nervously at the crowd. "We're here to maintain order," she began. I stood. "Then let's talk about the $250,000 missing from HOA accounts." Gasps filled the room. I laid out everything. Fake landscaping invoices, selective fines, misuse of funds. Photos, dates, signatures, it was all there. Doug turned pale. Karen shouted that I was lying, until Rebecca stepped forward, recording in hand. "These are your own words from last week's meeting, Karen. Remember?" The room erupted. Within days, state investigators moved in. Karen, Doug, and Officer Benson were all arrested. Embezzlement, fraud, and abuse of authority. For the first time in months, Pine Creek was silent again. Peaceful. But this time, it was a peace we'd earned. Sarah's shoulder healed. The trellis stood tall, covered in roses that bloomed brighter than ever. Neighbors greeted us with smiles now, real ones. The HOA was rebuilt under honest leadership. Sometimes I'd catch Sarah looking at that trellis and shaking her head. "All this over a few flowers," she'd say. I'd smile. "No, over power. And the people who thought they could abuse it. They called me dangerous once. Maybe they were right. But danger's not about violence. It's about discipline. They wanted compliance. What they got was justice. And I'd do it all again, exactly the same way."